If our brains have a default mechanism that leads to racist beliefs and behaviors, do we not intentionally need to build our anti-racist muscle? Improve our ability to think objectively and act empathetically despite our natural tendency to be biased? Considering scientists have already proven that race is not biological, but rather an invented system to differentiate, divide, and conquer others for power and profit, and neuroscientists have proven that biases affect us unknowingly, the question becomes, can we change the way we think about race? And if so, how? Cultural neuroscience is the brain science that studies how culture affects the way we logically analyze things and make decisions, and how we think differently about things depending on our cultural training. Recent cognitive developments, especially in intercultural situations, help us better understand the way our brains work with cultural stimuli and why being biased is so normal, and why being culturally intelligent or able to understand people's behaviors, beliefs, and value systems and adapt to them is so challenging. I'm going to share with you 3 key learnings neuroscience has proven that will help us continue to build this anti-racist muscle. Number 1, our brains are malleable, and neurons, brain cells, use neurotransmitters to make connections, and they disconnect, reconnect, create new connections throughout life. It doesn't end when you hit puberty or achieved an MBA. Different types of brain cells grow, connect, and get stronger. Hence why we know and believe we can change our minds even after we've been taught something and have believed it to be true for a long time. 2, when we are learning anything, our neurons become more strongly connected, and this creates a stronger network which allows faster communication between the cells. The more you practice your new knowledge or skill, it doesn't just make it easier, but it actually changes the brain. So we also know that if we spend more time in environments that are different, that expose us to different cultural customs, beliefs, behaviors, and we practice those, we too can better understand them and change the way our brain thinks about them. 3, our brain is shaped by and responds to our socio-cultural environment. And these cultural influences are often outside of our conscious awareness. Bias is a product of the way our brains are structured for efficiency, so that we can make quick decisions to survive. It's natural. It's not necessarily good or accurate, but sometimes it's helpful. But that's also why many of us don't realize that our own behaviors are rooted in biases and racist in nature, even though not intentional. It's not like the majority of us wake up and say, oh, what can I do that's racist today? Yet, we've been so trained unwittingly that our default thinking patterns are based on racist learnings. So what have we observed that can change that? Social science experiments have proven that young children don't know hate and don't consider race until it is taught. You can see this with your own eyes by speaking to young children who have no concept of classism, racism, or colorism. But there is an age where our brains have made significant neural connections to decide what is right and wrong from what we have been taught or shown by our caregivers. And that's as early as 7 years old. So is it possible that we're just not learning the information we need to know from an early enough age at home and in school that we could be building our anti-racist muscle and be better equipped to foster multicultural relationships from early on? I suggest we take a page out of the Ivy League Business School playbook and start teaching cultural intelligence concepts like the concept of time or hierarchy earlier in school so that young people understand how culture affects the way we think and behave. We need to inspect things like why certain groups are more independent versus group-oriented, why certain cultures are better in one field of study and others are better in another. In an increasingly global and multicultural world, it is important to investigate issues related to cultural diversity, such as anti-Black racism. joining diversity groups or community discussions on race and social justice to learn about, cultural influences and people's perceptions and interactions with others. It will lead to greater appreciation for other people and improve your relationships with Black folks in particular. We want to reduce intercultural conflict and increase intercultural admiration. But some dirty words like white supremacy and the angry Black man need to be dismantled, picked apart, and laid to rest for this work to take effect. These concepts were used deceivingly by various political and religious leaders to dominate other groups, convert them, or own them as workers. But no one culture is superior, and all of us are in the same trap because we're human. Our brains work the way they do, and we need to outsmart them. By building our anti-racist muscle, we can combat our human weaknesses and do this intentional work.